Hey kids community, we're back with another exciting Webinar Wednesday. So good afternoon everyone. My name is Franklin. I'm the Product App Specialist for Kids and your webinar host. So it's great to be back showing you the tips and tricks you need to know to becoming that supercharged power user. But before we start today's webinar, let me introduce Julia, who will be moderating today's webinar. Julia?
Thanks, Franklin. Hi again, my name is Julia. I am the Marketing Specialist for KISP, and I will be your webinar moderator for today. So that means if you have any questions for us throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them in the chat box. You can find it on the GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. So we highly encourage your participation. We will answer any questions that you may have, and I will be monitoring all the incoming questions and then reading them out at the end of the webinar.
So every week we try to show you the features of kits that will help you make your sales effort a quick and successful one. Today we're going to take a look at how to create that awesome rendering following some quick and simple steps that will surely make a big impression on your client. So Julia, what do we have for our community today?
All right, so the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to be going over the steps to creating that ultimate rendering. So we're going to be going over choosing the right perspective to use for your layout. Also using the KOE items to enhance your scene, including our top 5 go-to items, and also creating quick environments with the KOE architectural elements that'll help your client envision their space. As always, let's get started with the opportunity. So for today's webinar, the client needs a private executive office with a casual meeting and sitting area where he can meet with clients, but also as well with his team. So Franklin is with the client now, and he's already completed a layout based on the client's needs. So with understanding those requirements, he now has an opportunity to create an enhanced visual of the scene to close the deal.
All right, so here's the project that was created. What I want to do now is create a few renderings that will help my client envision the scene. First, what I need to do is rotate the layout in the right position or perspective that will truly provide that visual for our client. What is the right perspective? We can determine this by understanding the client's need for that space. Let's take this layout as an example. It's an executive office that may be visible to guests, so appearance, fit, and finish must be professional, neat, and clean. But it also needs to be accommodating and inviting to guests. So how do we actually show that when we just are looking at the furniture? You know, a good tip is to make the seats look a little bit more accommodating. As you can see here, I have the 2 desk chairs in front of the desk that aren't just squarely straight with the actual desk. I have them turned in. Also, pulling out the meeting chairs and also turning them somewhat open to the environment can also make the scene look a little bit more inviting. Okay? Now, location of the space may also indicate the importance of how the space is to look. So the rendering should be somewhat reflective of that idea. So again, what I mean about location is we need to understand the overall project. And for instance, if this is an office that's going to be seen by the client as they come into the office space, then you want to make sure that this office space looks as best as possible. And again, going back to the very first factor there, it needs to look professional, neat, and clean. Right? Now, even though this office is for an executive officer to do his or her daily job, it's also a meeting space for clients and team members. So pick items that will be reflective of the use of the space. All right? So these are all the factors that should be considered when presenting your scene. So understanding the client's requirements is important to providing them that right visual to sell your idea faster. Remember this. We're always creating a scene for our clients, so what we need to do is to create a visual that is indicative of that space. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that I take my layout and I'm going to place it somewhat in a perspective that can showcase all the elements that are in this particular scene right now. So I'm pretty satisfied with this layout. What I can do is I can create a quick rendering, which I'll do right now. And again, if you're client-facing, you always want to make sure that you're choosing the very first rendering option so that you can create a very quick rendering for them. Now, what I always suggest that you do, if given that you have the time to do this, and let's say you can go back to your office place, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you create the best rendering possible. Okay. Now, to create that best rendering, you can do so by using the best rendering option, as I did here with just using the first one. But what I like to do is I like to enhance the rendering by using the KOA Catalog. All right? So I'm just going to save this quickly to my photo library. and then we're going to go back. All right, I always talk about the KOA catalog and how it's important to helping you bolster your sales message. So let's open up that catalog. We're going to go to Add Item menu, and we're going to go ahead and find the Kits Design Collection. And there we have the Kits Office Environment Elements, which is the KOE in short, KOE catalog. So if you're new to the KOE catalog, I suggest that you sync it and go through all the different categories first to understand what you have available, and then listing the top items like that you'd like to use for your projects. These are my top elements. So again, tapping into the actual catalog will open up those categories. So what I like to use based on the project are these 5 items. Basically, finding some type of equipment that, again, is indicative of the space. For instance, we're actually using a private office space with a casual meeting area, so we want to make sure that we use elements that reflect that space. So a computer or laptop is important. If I just quickly go back to my project here, you can see that I have a monitor arm that's on that desk. So utilizing what's actually in the layout that's been created is important too. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I bring a computer, but in this case I need to bring in a monitor as well as a keyboard to reflect what we're using in this space. All right, so let me just go ahead and fix this perspective here. I'm going to go back into the Add Item menu. I'm going to go into my Office Elements and Equipment, and the first thing I want to find is LCDF. So I'm going to tap on LCDF, and you can see here, just with the little summary at the bottom, that it's an LCD monitor without a base. So I'm going to add that to my project, and I'm just going to quickly drag it in, and we're just going to leave it floating there for a moment. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that with this monitor I'll need a keyboard. This can be consistent of, let's say, bringing in one standalone laptop or a standalone computer. In this case, we can actually assume that we need these 2 particular items, which really fill in the very first items I like to bring in as one, because we need a monitor and a keyboard to go with that. So I'm going to go ahead and I go back into my equipment, and I'm going to find that keyboard. There it is. I'm going to double tap on the image, and then I'm going to drag it into the scene. Okay, so I have my keyboard and I have my monitor, which really makes up the computer or laptop that I like to use. And then what I want to do is I also want to bring in some type of additional equipment like a telephone or a cell phone. So again, I'm going to go back into the KOA catalog, and I'm going to go ahead and find a landline. All right, so there's my telephone. Let's double tap that image, and again, we're going to drag it. We're just going to place it on top of the desk. Okay. I also like to bring in additional accessory or some type of decorative item. It could really be anything that is sort of indicative of the person or type of person that's going to use the space. In this case, it's an executive officer. They need their Java. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to the KOA catalog, this time into accessories. I'm going to find them that nice mug. And the reason why I like to use this mug is because it's nice, bright red, so it adds a little bit of a pop of color. So we're going to add it to my project, and we're going to drag it on top of the desk. All right, great. The 4th item I like to bring in is some type of plant or book or an additional accessory or decorative item. In this case, I like to bring in a plant. It's a ficus that I normally bring in, my favorite ficus here. So we're going to go into the catalog again. This time I'm going to go into plants, and what I want to look for is plant F1, which is my ficus. Let's double tap on that, and I'm going to drag it into the space. Okay. Now you may need this plant to appear in multiple areas. So, even though I'm trying to list what my top 5 items are here, what I like to do is any items that are in this space, I'm going to try to utilize as many times as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and create a duplicate of that. For now, we're just going to place it right in the front. Okay, I'm not going to space plan this yet until I have all my items and people in, and then what I can do is go into a plan view and start setting everything appropriately. All right, so the last item I like to bring in is my person. Now, why do we like to bring people into perspectives like this? You can see commonly whenever you work with an interior designer that they'll always use some type of person within a perspective or elevation of a drawing. And the main reason is to provide some sort of scale to the drawing or to the rendering that or perspective that you're looking at. So it's important that you bring in a person to provide that kind of scale, but also to reflect the type of space that's being used. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my favorite person. That is Ken. He is PM9 because for some reason he just fits the seats properly. Doesn't matter what manufacturer I use. He's always using the seats appropriately, or looks proper in terms of a graphic on those seats. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag them into the space. Okay, great. So it looks like I have all the items that I want to use. I can certainly keep going on and on and on, really making the space look pop, or this space look lively and really pop up the scene that I'm trying to create for the client here. But what I really want to focus on are 5 items that you can actually go to. So anytime you create a project similar to this or any kind of project, you have your 5 go-to items that you can use almost all the time. Right? So let's go ahead and go into Plan View. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adjusting some of my items, like this plant in the back here. I'm just going to quickly rotate that a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to move my desk and items that are in this desk area here. I'm just going to move it slightly backwards to provide a little bit more space to the front. There we go. Okay, now I can move that plant in there. And then I can quickly zoom in, and I can start adjusting the rest of the items here. Let's get Ken set back into a seat. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure I get that monitor arm so I can position it the way Ken likes to view his monitor. Okay. And you can see here why it's important to use various camera angles. These will really help you build your scenes properly so that you can actually adjust the items appropriately, like I'm here in Plan View. It's really allowing me to space plan this project and placing items where they need to be. And let's get that nice little red mug. And we're just going to turn it in so we can reach that handle. All right, so let's go to 3D view. So you can now see how everything is set where it needs to be. I do need to make a little bit of adjustments here. For instance, this monitor needs to be raised just a little bit higher. There we go. And also what I want to do is I can see that Ken's arm is in that chair, or the arm of the chair. So I'm going to just raise him up a bit. Now the one thing that you do also need to understand here is that, again, we're creating a graphic, okay? As long as the graphic looks reasonably correct when you create that rendering, there's no reason why you can't have, let's say, a particular item going through another item like Ken's arm in that armchair. As long as the client gets the idea of what you're trying to create, you're well on your way to actually closing that deal. Okay, so now that I have Ken set in appropriately, what I want to do is I also want to group them with that chair so that anytime I select Ken, I also select that chair so that I can move them as one. So I'm just going to push him in slightly in to the desk. And even though I can see that his leg is kind of going through there, I'm just going to move that keyboard because I know that when I turn the layout to showing the perspective that I want to illustrate, you won't see that, little graphic issue. All right? So look how fast we quickly created this scene. I have everything in here that is indicative of the space. I have my executive. I have the monitor using the monitor arm. I have his nice little red cup for his Java every day. He probably uses about 5 cups, depending on on his stress levels. But anyways, what we want to do here is we want to make sure that we create that wonderful quick rendering. Okay, and again, remember, we're supposed to be client-facing right now, so using the very first rendering option is always key to really making sure that they understand what they're getting. Okay, and even though I'm pretty satisfied with what I've created here, what I want to do is I want to quickly create an environment further enhancing what this space is going to look like. Okay, now we may not always have an opportunity to use the include environment feature by capturing a photo of the client space to use with the layout that's been created. It may also not be suitable to use that feature for certain projects. For instance, this is a small office space. You know, and if you've been to my my webinar regarding the include environment feature, you know that there's a little bit of photography 101 involved, and the space must be suitable for the layout that you're going to actually put in there, right? So what can I do to enhance this project by creating, let's say, a mock environment? Easy. We can go ahead and use the KOA architectural elements that are provided in the catalog to create a very quick space. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save this rendering to my photo library, and then we're going to go back. And then what I want to do is I want to start off by placing a carpet or flooring on that floor. The great thing is this is a 15 by 15 foot space, and I know that I do have generic flooring sizes that here you can see carpet 15. Carpet 15 is basically a carpet size which is 15 feet by 15 feet. So we can quickly drag this in. And then we're going to go into plan view. And all I'm going to do is align this according to my floor grid. So I'm just going to place it right here. And you can see what it's actually doing is it's covering the area of my office space. All right, so if I go to 3D view, you can see that. I can double tap on that carpet, and we can give it a quick color here. I'm going to go ahead and use FCDK16. So we're going to add that color. I'm going to tap on done. Okay, you can already see how the flooring itself already creates this invisible boundary of the actual space. You can go ahead and actually render this because the client can actually see within a 15-foot space what their layout is going to look like, and what they're not seeing with you know, I guess in comparison to the last rendering we did is just white space, because we now have a floor that actually grounds and provides some type of visual boundary of the actual size of the office space. Okay, I'm not going to go and create a rendering right now because what I want to do is I want to add some quick walls to really close up the space and make it look exactly how I want to show or create the scene for my client. All right, so we're going to go into Add Item menu. I'm going to go into my catalog again, and then this time I'm going to go ahead and use one of the pre-configured wall typicals that I have. And again, this needs to be somewhat reflective of your client space. It doesn't have to look exactly like it. It just needs to be a close representation of what the layout is going to look like within their space. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use curtain wall typicals, and it's 9 feet high. So you will need to know some details of the actual office other than what the architecture is in there. So ceiling height is important. And here what I'm going to do is, again, I have the option of using a 15-foot by 15-foot by 9-foot high curtain wall typical, which is at the very bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and double tap that, and I'm going to drag it into the space. Okay. Now I'm just going to quickly go to plan view, and we're going to rotate that. I'm going to make sure my snap to is on, and now I'm going to drag it so that it's on top of the carpet. Perfect. Okay. Now let's go to 3D view, and you can see how much of a difference that actually makes with creating a very quick scene. Now, I'm not satisfied with this because that one back wall where the overhead organizer is actually connected to, it is non-existent. So we want to quickly add some additional walls to this. So again, I'm going to go to my Add Item menu, this time into the category of walls. We know that it's 9 feet high, so we're going to go into that category. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in one 9-foot by 10-foot wall and drag it into the space. Let's go to plan view. And let's now adjust that wall. Great. Now, I'm just going to quickly duplicate it, and I'm going to attach it to the end of the other wall. And don't worry about it surpassing that 15-foot space because really you're not going to see that when we actually position the rendering into the right, quote-unquote, perspective that we're going to place the layout in. Okay? So now the reason why I'm not placing a wall in the front is to make sure that I can capture the perspective that I want. I can certainly zoom in and give them more of a realistic feel, as you can see here, but you lose a lot of the elements of that actual space. But this may be actually a perspective that may be important to your client, so there's no rhyme or reason why you can't zoom into particular items. Again, it's understanding what your clients are looking for in the layout or in the scene that you're creating here. Okay, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I showcase the scene entirely and place it in a way that they'll understand. And what I'm doing is I'm positioning the rendering and perspective in a way that actually covers all white space. So all you see is just the furniture and the elements that we're using to create the space. All right? Okay, so I'm satisfied with this perspective here, but before I actually create it, what I want to do is add some color. So I'm going to go ahead and add some wall colors, and we're going to use some neutrals here. Now, something's important for you to understand here. When you select any kind of colors on the wall, albeit it may be the colors that are somewhat reflective of your client's space, what you want to do is you want to make sure that they're light and airy colors because when you create the rendering, if you close in the space, the light that's created to illuminate the scene may be blocked by those walls. And any color that may be dark and heavy may absorb some of that light, so you cast a lot of shadowing. Okay, so it kind of resembles what light or how light would be affected in real life. So again, to understand that to keep your environment as open as possible, usually what I like to do is if I can actually create a quick environment that only shows two side walls, then I try to do that to leave the rest of the walls completely open to allow as much light into that scene I created. But in this case, it's a larger space, so we do need to create 3 sets of sides or sides of the walls, and that's the reason that I'm doing it here. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose colors that are somewhat lighter and bright so that it doesn't darken up my rendering when I create it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to use white pointer. I'm going to tap on Done. And then for this side, we're going to choose a different color. We're going to add a little bit of color. So I want to take a look at some of the blues I have here. Let's go with Valley High. Tap on Done. And you can see that I didn't have to tap on both walls because they're the same like items. And we all know that because the behavior of the item, whenever you select one color for the same item, it will add that color to all like items. So that's the reason why I only have to change one side wall there, and it does it for both. Okay, so let's just quickly zoom out. You can see how wonderful my little setting looks like, and we've literally created this in about, let's say, about 15, maybe 20 minutes. But in reality, if I was actually sitting in front of my client, this would take me probably anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. That's why it's very important to know what are your go-to items that you can use based on the layout. It's always good to practice. If you know exactly what you want to sell to your client, it's always good to practice that before you create your scene. But we all know that, the idea of this tool is to create the scene in front of the client. So you may not have that luxury, but if you do, then you can always practice what elements work best. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with the scene now. What I want to do is create that quick rendering. Okay, and you can see how quickly we're able to transform our little layout from a white space by adding some KOE elements like the computer or equipment, people, plants, decorative items, accessories, even the little walls that we created here, how quickly it transformed the space. All right, and again, there's no reason why you can't create more than one rendering, because if you show it in this perspective, you may want to show a little bit more of a two-point perspective, where you get a little bit of that curtain wall glazing on the right-hand side. And again, we can create that quick rendering. It's always good to create these multiple renderings, because you never know when you need to revisit them to show the client different angles, as well as possibly creating a larger document or larger presentation package, which you can actually show them multiple images of what the space may look like. All right, so I have all these wonderful renderings that I can use. Again, I'm going to quickly save that to my photo library. And I'm pretty satisfied with all the renderings that I created. So again, understanding the importance in creating this visual will always take you that much closer to closing those deals quicker. Now, get familiar with the KOA catalog and know what your go-to items will be, and I guarantee you that your client will know who to go to whenever they have needs. All right? So that's pretty much it, everyone. You know, if you're satisfied with your rendering, you can go ahead and create that quick sheet, but you already know all how to do that, so go ahead, have fun, start using the KOA catalog. We've shown you all you need to know about creating these enhanced renderings and visuals for your projects. All right. Now, before I sign off here, again, I just want to go back to the project. And remember, again, we're talking about creating that right visual and creating as many visuals as possible to get the idea across to your client. I'm just going to go into my previous renderings, because what I did was I created some renderings in the best quality for you to see what the differences are. Okay, so again, what you see here are the visuals that we created today. Again, creating a nice HD image. So you can see here there's quite a difference in the shade and shadow and reflection, even how the fit and finish looks of the furniture. So it's important that if you do have the time, then great, you know, take the time to create these renderings. This one actually took roughly about 30 minutes for me to create. And remember, the more you have detailed in your actual rendering, the longer it'll take. And here's another one that I did. So you can see, again, the fit and finish of the actual furniture comes out much better. You can see the sheen and shine off the actual furniture pieces, like the handles on the credenza there, as well as some of the lighting that's casted off the furniture items. So again, it's a matter of understanding what your client requires, and if you really need to create that best rendering, then take the time to create it and really create these scenes that are wonderful and that are exciting, that'll get them energized to understanding that, again, this is the right dealership that they're working with, right salesperson that they're working with, and they have all the tools required to finding them solutions. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today. Enjoy the rest of the day. Have a wonderful summer, and see you next week.